Mark, outline for us the struggles and the challenges that climate change might pose to the Caribbean as a whole.
Well, first of all, within the CARICOM region, the Climate Change Center is responsible for coordinating climate change response. One of the things we have been looking to do, firstly, is to understand the sciences. So what we have sought to do within the center is to first move towards what we call downscaling models. Now, those models are indicating that what we are expecting, while it is unclear about the frequency of natural events or extreme events, the models are indicating more severity of those extreme events. In other words, if previously we had categories 3 cyclones or hurricanes, we're now looking at possibly categories 4 and 5. So in planning forward, we have to continue to build a risk management ethic within the CARICOM region. We're also thinking about, or the models are also showing issues relating to scarcity of water, higher sea level rises. So we're speaking of somewhere in the vicinity about 23 to 77 cm by 2100. Most of the Caribbean region or CARICOM countries are small island, low-lying states. So this would have some severe impacts. If we take it from there in terms of what it means from a social perspective, we are beginning to see the proliferation of health impacts such as malaria, dengue, and so these are things we have to always be conscious of and planning for as we go forward.
I mean, annual, as you mentioned, annual hurricanes and tornadoes and disasters of that nature are fairly regular in the Caribbean. I mean, they happen and they're fairly predictable. Is the region not already fairly adaptable and fairly capable to deal with these disasters?
In fact, the issue is more one of additionality. Yes, the region has been dealing with these events, but they've been dealing with these events at a Category 2, Category 3 level. What we're speaking about now is a Category 4, Category 5 hurricane. To give one example, Grenada, for example, in 2006 had Hurricane Ivan, which was a low Category 3 hurricane. But that low Category 3 hurricane wiped out 200% of Grenada's GDP. Not only that, Grenada is one of 2 major producers of nutmeg, the other being Malaysia. With that hurricane, it affected her nutmeg crop. So it takes 10 years for nutmeg trees to come back. By that time, Grenada would have lost market share as well. So those are some of the second, third order impacts that sometimes we don't even begin to factor in. So yes, we have been dealing with some of these threats. The severity of the threat is what we're now having to deal with.
And we were talking just before the camera started rolling about cricket, which is one of the Caribbean's national sports. You know, if climate change hits the Caribbean in a bad way, cricket needs a big window in which to operate. How could climate change the way people live their lives out there?
Well, there are a couple of things we're beginning to see, and that's the shift in the seasons. So what we're seeing is that when we expected the dry season to be there, it's not there. When we expect the wet season to be there, it's not there. So the whole shift in seasonality can also shift the way we plan for these sporting events. Not only are these just sporting events, but because the Caribbean depends heavily on tourism, those sporting events have significant economic implications. Outside of that, the Caribbean is a rich biodiversity area. And the shift in seasons, what we're seeing is that even the biodiversity is being impacted. So we're having to reconsider the seasonality aspect in terms of when we will allow for culling or hunting and when we will have our close season. So these are all issues which are impacting the lives and the livelihoods of individuals as we go forward.
And a final one, do you feel that the Caribbean delegates and diplomats here, are they going to be playing an active role in the negotiations? Do they have much leverage amongst some of the bigger nations taking part?
In fact, the Caribbean has always played a very important role. In the previous interview, I overheard your respondent indicating that the committee that was set up by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to find a 100 billion by 2020 came back with their recommendations. One of the persons on that committee was President Jagdeo of Guyana. Currently the chair of the AOSIS group is another CARICOM national, and in fact is being chaired by Grenada. So what we have sought to do within the Caribbean is to establish alliances, because we feel that the climate change discussion is bigger than any single entity. And so we have sought to approach it more in terms of a group rather than as an individual. Clearly we have different aspirations, but we all have common responsibilities. And so yes, we are pursuing it from that perspective, and we still believe that with a group of 77 plus China, because if we're looking to broaden the discussion outside of just having Annex I countries, then the Caribbean has an important role to play in bridging that gap between what we may call the newly developed countries or developing countries and the Annex I countries.